Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Dwarven Tavern. I am your host, Dr. Jeff Goins, and with us in the tavern is...
Lyric.
Shocker. You've seen her before, I know. Hi. And today we are going to be talking about orchestrating your dungeon or your adventure. It doesn't have to be a dungeon. It can be outdoors as well. There is music outdoors as well.
There's music in every aspect of
life. Look at... I can't think of one single piece of music. Fantasia. Okay, there you go. The importance, I believe that Walt Disney was famous for saying that, I think he was one of the pioneers, excuse me, he was one of the pioneers of music. Not music because, you know, in silent films they had a piano player in the theater.
Yeah.
But he was one of the founding fathers, I guess, of putting music in a much higher priority bracket.
Yeah.
He said that a film was not a film unless it had the right music in it. And one really good example of that is the movie Dragon Slayer. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but Dragon Slayer had one of the worst scores. It was a fantastic movie, won an Oscar for special effects. Mm-hmm. But it had one of the worst scores in the history of scores.
Countering that, look at literally any of the Star Wars movies. Say what you want about the plot and the characters, but the music is always on point.
John Williams. I mean, the guy, Yeah. He was actually in the last Star Wars.
Which is awesome.
He did a cameo.
If I could ever meet John Williams, I think my life would be totally made. George Lucas, not so much. But John Williams, absolutely.
I actually saw a video where these two guys, one had a trombone, the other had a trumpet, and they were playing da-da-da-da-da-da-da in his front yard, and he came out and was like doing that. Doing that orchestral thing. He's a cool guy. But that as an aside, capturing the feel of your adventure is well, it's something that you want to do, right? It's very desirable.
It can be essential, especially with something that if you have a bard per se. I have a webcomic that is called the Tavern Club, where we have a bunch of characters playing. It's called Dice and Monsters, but it's basically D&D for the first time. And
I would have never guessed that.
I know, right? One of these characters plays a bard, and for that, even though it's a webcomic, I have put in the music via the lyrics so that it gives the point of using music for your game to build that emphasis and really drive that character's personality home. For that instance, it actually uses your music, so... because that music is amazing. So,
thank you.
So the point that we're going to be making today is that when you have games, sometimes they can be boosted using music that can relate to what's going on.
Nay, I say can't. I say will be. I say must be. I say that. but it's true. Your music, your adventures can be boosted if you choose the correct music for what you're doing and get it from the correct sources. Mm-hmm. When I was a fledgling DM back in the early 80s,
the Bronze Age,
yes, when we
D&D. Actually, that's would you Stone Age? Would that be the Stone Age of D&D? Was the 80s?
No.
I'm not saying of you. I'm saying of D&D.
No, that would probably be about the Copper Age, because the first D&D was chainmail and the early rules for tabletop miniatures in the 70s. So
we digress.
The mid-80s. History is a thing. But, that aside, when we were not shivering to the sound of the Iron Horse as it traveled across the plains, we would play D&D. And I used a lot of Yes, because, Yes, as a group, is very ethereal.
The band, not the affirmation.
Correct. Yes. Would you like to hear some music? Yes. We use that a lot.
Fantastic.
Yes, yes. I played a lot of Yes, and it elevated our campaigns to just. I mean, there were tears.
Yeah.
And there were screams of frustration and rage, and I mean there was the much snarling and gnashing of teeth, as it were.
And however many years later that you've started using music, I mean you've used music in D&D for your children since forever, but in the more serious campaigns that we've been having of late, instilling very similar music and very similar sounding points, it's caused the same sort of grief for your gamers.
Yes, it's true, because a good DM and someone who likes music in many different forms, as we can find that perfect piece of music for that perfect emotion. Because, as you know, if you listen to music at all, that music brings up emotions.
Yes.
And it causes that state-dependent memory. It might remind you of something from your childhood, or it could bring up a bad traumatic experience, or a happy or a sad one, whatever. And it's different for everybody, but if you take a piece of music that is right for you and you put it in this moment, what was the most recent one that we used? We used, I used it was Heart, and it was they were doing it live, and it was the Immigrant Song. They were covering the Immigrant Song from Led Zeppelin, and it was a moment where one of the characters in the game was summoning, was calling for the help of Thor. And when all you could see through the clouds was his boots come down on either side of this hilltop and smash this evil thing to bits, and Heart was playing, and the screaming, and the and it was real chunky guitar, and it brought out this fantastic feeling of power.
Yeah.
In the moment, and it as
even more recent than that was actually with the orcs who freed Brumsh from his imprisonment in basically the in-between, where he was placed in cement of, God-capturing ability, and two orcs, just two, went to this in-between place and figured out the contraption that held him in place and poured molten lava over him until he was freed. And at that very moment, I don't even know which song you played.
It might sound counterproductive.
He's a god, so
yeah. So the lava didn't hurt him, but it freed, it melted the poured material.
It was like obsidian or something.
Yeah, it was like obsidian. It was only much stronger, and it was from the actual plane of Mechanus.
Yeah.
And it kept him captured. And I'm trying to remember what piece it was as well.
Well, I mean, at this point, it's not really relevant.
Yeah, it's kind of
piece was played. It's just that there was a bit of music that was played during this moment as he broke his arm free and held up his hammer. And... Spear. I was obviously very...
She was still stuck on a hill with Thor.
Hammers are just my weapon of choice.
Hammers are just short, blunt spears.
Flattened out spears. But, he held up his spear, and the two orcs were like, that's Grumsh! That's our god! And he bestowed the blessing of Grumsh onto these two orcs and then vanished. But, as you can see, it makes him emotional because it was quite...
It was
a moment, and it was built up for years for us to get to this point. So if you feel like, your moment is not as climactic as you'd like it to be, then adding music can really put that emphasis on the plot point. It can really drive what happened home. Obviously, not too hard, because I forgot what weapon he had. But I knew exactly, I can remember exactly what happened. Maybe not the details thereof.
You were too emotional.
I was the whole time.
Yeah.
So, my question to pose to you, to answer for the audience, is how do you choose the perfect music for these moments?
That is a very good question, random audience member.
I speak for you.
The best way is there's several different methods of choosing a good piece of music. I have had several moments in upcoming sessions that it was actually interesting because there's this one part where this one thing happened that I can't tell anybody here.
Because we're part of this campaign.
Because we're part of the campaign. But and when I heard this piece of music and I went, that's the thing of the stuff. And that's what I need. And I developed the plot line around that piece of music that I heard. But then I went and got a different piece of music to make it better. So the music inspired a plot point, and then the plot point inspired the music.
Kind of a building.
It was kind of a building thing. It was a multi-layered excursion, and
so sometimes the music can choose you.
Sometimes, actually, the music always chooses me because But
just the spiritually connected.
Well, yeah, I think that's true, but neither here nor there. But back in the old days, right? Back before YouTube and Google and the various other search engines. I can
actually remember those times.
Yeah. We had to use what music... Right. You don't.
I'm almost 30, so...
Back in those days, back in the days when I first started using Yes, I had to use what was in my record collection because I didn't have access to anything else. There was no online. Today, you can literally type in a mood. You can Google a mood and go for videos.
Yeah. And
it comes up with a list, a shopping list of music that you could possibly fit your moment, your situation.
Right.
And YouTube, of course, has a lot of really, really good stuff to use.
So if you have a favorite song, if you have a favorite band, you can look to them for campaign ideas instead of being like, well, I need music for this particular scenario. You can actually base your campaign around this one instant. When that happens, it works effectively, but it's very short-lived. Right. If you have a scenario where you need something to be emphasized, then you can do what he suggested and type in a word that it fits the build for what's going on. For example, if you have a happy scenario and you have, say, characters trotting along and they find a city that's filled with candy and little munchkin people, maybe they're gnomes, and they're building away at chocolate chip towers, and they've got candy cane rivers, and they're just,
that would hurt. Candy cane rivers. Oh God, it's
I was imagining it was melted candy cane, which is just as bad.
It's burning my flesh, my skin. It's sugar. It's boiling my flesh.
But you walk into this campaign, and you could have some happy music in the background.
Not with.
Or on the opposite end of the spectrum, if you want to instill something a little more menacing,
like molten sugar candy cane rivers.
Let's switch the scenario.
What could be worse than?
You're walking into a village that is candy, and the gnomes are singing, and they're building these chocolate chip towers, and they're boating across the candy cane river, and there's just this dark, sinister music playing in the background. Even though this is a holly jolly scenario, what's going on? You're already setting it up for a plot point that could throw your characters for a loop.
Yeah. So instead of going, your characters are going. Right? It captures the moment. And that's vital. That is very important. You've done a few pieces like that where
kind of.
Yeah.
There's one scenario that I can remember where they were climbing up a mountain and trying to find these cultists, and they managed to go into basically a little cave on the side. And they found the cultists because they heard singing. And I found a song from In This Moment, and I believe it's in This Moment 11:11, and it was a song about, you know, doing, I guess I can't even remember, it's like giving up or whatever, or giving her all, and they listened to the song, and she was singing this, and then at the end of the song, she was thrown into the sacrificial pit of doom, and that's when the characters lunged to help.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, that's just one of the many instances.
Oh yeah, you can put music to just about everything.
Yeah.
And right now there are a lot of programs that are out there specifically for gamers.
Yeah.
And I believe I did a review of one called Ambient DM. I did a review of that. I believe. Yeah. Which is super good for incidental background noises and the sounds and stuff that it brings up. It's immersive. Plus, you can, if you don't have that. Which I recommend. I think I gave it like 5 axes.
Not stars. We're not a
not
hotel.
Stars. We're not a hotel. But there's plenty of stuff like that. Like you can get. I remember I did a search for sea sounds, ambient sea sounds, and someone, for whatever reason you could imagine, posted like a 12-hour ocean soundtrack. It was just 12 hours of ocean sounds with creaking decks, and everybody was falling asleep.
I was about to say, you probably want that for if you have insomnia and you can't sleep very well.
Yeah,
that would put me right to sleep.
Yeah, it was very much used for that, and it had the same effect on my players, so we had to keep it upbeat, and I was like, oh, wake up, come on, we're playing, we're going to roll initiative.
You can also use sound for individual characters, and we have a couple instances of this. The first one is we have something called the arena, where we have characters basically build their stats so that they can be a part of higher campaigns. And this is for characters that we've had where their campaigns have died, and we don't talk to the people that we played with those characters anymore, and they've just been kind of sitting on the shelf for a while, and we're like, you know what, we should bring them back, but we don't really have a story for them anymore. Oh, we could put them with these guys, but they're 5 levels higher. So we put them in the arena to kind of give them that experience. And in that moment, I have a character, Buduk, and if you know our videos, you know of Buduk. Summary, he is a half-orc rogue, he's a thug, he is a brute, and he is mean. And very bad at what he does. So he goes into the arena to fight, and we found the perfect theme song for him, which was actually a wrestler's theme song called Samoa Joe. And he walks into the arena with 2 birds held high and just, fuck the world, I'm fighting this arena, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And it was perfect for that moment because it really encapsulated just how much of a douche he is. But it also gave an example of how menacing he could be. Mm-hmm. And then another instance is not necessarily song, but sound effect. And your campaign, Captain Ragnar, why don't you give a little background on that one?
Well, Ragnar is, he's a captain in it's kind of a sandstorm, 3.5. It's kind of a sandstorm campaign where he's playing a desert schooner captain. And he's like Druid Wujin.
Sandbender.
Sandbender, pretty much. And he's searching for stuff.
As pirates do.
Like, yeah, but he's more of a he's kind of a scavenger.
He's more of a involuntary storage unit.
Storage unit, right. But he's in more for the exotic animals that you find in fantasy desert settings.
Yeah.
And the sound effects there was what you were talking about.
Well, that's where the ship noises we were talking about.
Oh, right, yeah, that's right. Yeah, the ship noises.
So there was the ship noise, and then there's a character on that boat who is, I believe they call him the Doctor. He is the resident surgeon, and I can't remember his name. Is it Gaynor? Gagnor? Something like that?
Yeah.
Gagron.
Gagron.
His name is Gagron. And I picked him because of his name. And because my brother, who was the DM, he had a list of all these NPCs, and I'm like, I want that one. And
he stole the show.
I didn't know where I was going with this character, and then Ian told me that he was the surgeon on deck, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's creepy. And I started doing like this thing, and I'm like, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I'm doing this now. And my brother put cicada noise in the background, so it was just like, and like he'll just come out of the shadows and be like, "Are you ready for your appointment, doctor?" And he's like, "No." Just go back into the shadows.
Yeah, it was creepy and very, very cool because the sounds. I mean, it was like Pumpkinhead coming out to take your temperature. It's not an oral thermometer. I don't know. Thank you. So yeah, and my character, my main character, it was like my 15th, but he's my bard, and his name is Gazaron, and his theme song was always Barracuda. From Heart, and back in the day, and whenever Gazaron would ride, you'd hear don da don da don da don, the Barracuda sound, and that's just fun, get your character theme song, kind of sets the mood for them, for how they act, and if you ever need to get into character, you have a hard time going from. I have a wild elf archer named Inscabrius. Facilnilrio, with a green mohawk, and he's like 4 feet tall and can put 4 arrows into each other at like 300 yards in the less time it takes to blink. Go from his character, who's very enthusiastic and very righteous, but he's a fighter. He's not a paladin. And go from him to another character I have called Zirthok, who is a prince in training, Goliath with a hill giant's axe.
He's very stoic in personality, very in control,
very noble, and that. So you've got these two completely opposite ends of the spectrum, and to set the pace. Or set the mood for each of them, you listen to a certain piece of music for Inscabrius.
Or a certain sound effect. With the cicada noises. Like, I automatically, do the creepy thing when I hear the cicada noises, and then I can just filter back into a normal character by not listening to the cicada noises.
Right.
But also, you can have your characters not pick their theme song. When we were playing the Saints campaign, as it turned out, we were playing music on repeat because we needed some filter noise and just kind of just background noise for what was going on.
I know what you're going to say, too.
And sometimes the music would repeat. And because our turns were taking so long, we had like 4 attacks around or whatever. And when I have 4 attacks around, flurry of blows, that's going to take a long time. So I always had, is it Stacked to the Rafters? Like, is that the name of the song?
Yeah.
So
Stacked Actors.
So I had
Foo Fighters, right?
Yes, I had that song for Agathan, and it would come on every single time it was my turn. Right now. Yeah. And then when it came to Kelsey's turn, the Paladin, every single time, the Sugar Plum Fairies. Every time.
He's like slaying things at a mile away.
It didn't fit his character very well, but at the same time, it really did.
It became his theme song.
Yeah, so. And that was completely against the will of the player. Agathan's theme song is not necessarily that song, but that's one that makes me think of him, and I can get into his character when I hear it.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
we'll put some links to various places that you can find. I mean, Google and YouTube are the two most obvious places. But
which, if you don't know, there is actually, if you have a YouTube account, you probably have YouTube Studios or your account studio, and you can go in there, and they have at the very bottom of a list a general music library, and you can use some of those. Attribution free, which means that you don't have to credit the person. You probably should, because they're still amazing artists, but
good to be nice. I mean, it doesn't cost anything to mention them.
Yeah, there's a huge long list of music that you can separate via genre, feel, all that type of stuff. Even length. They've got up to like 8-minute songs on there that you can incorporate into your games, your videos, all sorts of things.
Yeah. So yeah, just look up the various things, do a search. Also take your favorite music, stuff that inspires you, because when you're a DM and you are relaying information to your players, if you are emotional, it will carry on. It will project to them, and they will be able to get what you're trying to do more and more efficiently. So,
especially if you're like-minded.
Yeah, because there have been many times when I've gotten just downright emotional when stuff's going down. And
boy, does that affect me.
It got to the point where I'm having to actually do cinematics where I'm not even in the room when I watch this. I'll be back when I get some tissues, and I'll just play the cinematic and then come back in. Is that okay? So what's wrong with this? And they'll be like, just wait.
Also, something else that you could do, and something else that we have done, and that is maybe do a recording of yourself having a song and doing that, and making it connect to an emotional part of the story.
Yeah.
Like,
if you are musically inclined, which many of you are, I'm sure. I know I like to do that. I've done a couple of theme songs for my players like that. So yeah. So I think that's about the best advice. If you got any questions or comments or suggestions or anything, I know that 2 Steps from Hell is a place is that an artist? That's an artist, right? Or a group. Why I don't. Yeah. 2 Steps from Hell. They put out a lot of musical stuff that you can search for that has like epic feels and stuff like that. I use regular bands. I use music from bands a lot because I like the old stuff. Yeah. Shockingly. Although I've used Tool and Korn. Yeah. And
I use a lot of In This Moment. Because that really drives the point across.
Oh yeah. So yeah, just go nuts with it and have fun. And if you got any comments or suggestions or anything, just let us know.
We'd love to hear from you.
We certainly would. So with that being said, you wanna?
Yeah, sure. I am Lyric.
And I am Dr. Jeff.
And on behalf of the entire cast and crew of the Dwarven Tavern, we wish for you to want for nothing but adventure.
And at first I feared it.
Then I charged. Thanks for watching. And we'll see you next time.